SoundCartel.
From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. Are you completely clear on how the new right to disconnect laws affect your business? Well, to help clarify is workplace expert Michelle Gibbings. She'll explain how to harness the new rules to ensure the best possible outcomes, as Michelle discusses with Jeff Waters.
The right to disconnect are recent laws that came in which give employees the right to disconnect from work. And so what it means for organisations is it's not that you can't contact employees outside of work hours, but you need to be fair, you need to be reasonable. And so what's really important is that leaders have conversations with their team members around what are the boundaries around work, and if you're not at work, if something is urgent, how can I contact you and what does that look like? So really what the right to disconnect is doing is helping enshrine what is really good practice that, people need time away from work to rest and recover and not feel that sense they have to be on all the time.
It's an interesting way of looking at it because, of course, most or many small businesses would be upset or uncomfortable with the amount of new regulation that's been brought in recently. And this is just one more compliance issue that they have to worry about. So you say that it reflects on the business in a positive sense because of worker productivity. Well,
what you can do is flip this and look at it from a positive perspective. And so what we know through research is that a person's productivity drops the longer the hours they work in a working week. So it's not as though, we just keep working, we become more and more productive. We become less productive. And so this is a sweet spot is that it's around that declines around 50 hours. Beyond 50 hours a week, your productivity starts to decline. And so what employers want to do is have conversations with their team members around how do you bring out the best in people. And I'll use myself as an example. I run a small business and I can work some weird hours. And I've always say to my team, I will work weird hours. I am not expecting you to respond. Would you like me to bank up the emails so that they don't get sent on the weekend and I can send them on a Monday? What's going to work for you? More often than not, they'll say, oh, no, send them whenever you're going to do it. Because if we choose to pick something up on a weekend, we're choosing to do that. Because my team also work flexibly. They've got a certain number of hours that they work through the week. They can do those hours
on the weekend or in the evening?
Exactly. I mean, there's certain things that have a deadline attached to it, but there's a lot of flexibility in the nature of the work that they do. And so what I'd really encourage business owners to do, sit down, have good conversations with your team, understand what's the environment that brings out the best in you, that enables you to be really productive? What does downtime look for you? And how do we create that environment where, the business needs are met, but also the needs of the employees are met that enable them to rest, recharge, so that when they're at work, they're actually at work and working well.
Yes, and not vaguing out and getting tired or something. So what do you mean when you say that the right to disconnect should be led by example?
Needs to be led by example because if you have leaders who don't role model good self-care behaviours, good boundaries, good discipline around how they switch off, it's so much harder for the team around them to switch off because they can look at the leader and go, the leader's on all the time, the leader's sending all these emails all the time. They'll feel pressured to potentially respond or potentially be on all the time. So if the leader can role model the right type of behaviour, and part of that right behaviour, it might mean they still do, as I said, some unusual hours, but they're really explicit about this is how I work, this is what works for me, but I want to understand what works for you as the employee and find that sweet spot where the leader can work in a way that enables them to be the best, but also enables the employee to be their best as well.
A lot of small business owners listening to this might think, I can't do that. I have to work 1 million hours a week just to keep my business going. What would you say to them?
With everything, and I understand the pressures of running a small business, Jeff. I get it. I run a small business myself. But as business owners, one of the most important things that you can do is take care of yourself.
Self-care.
The business is not going to run as effectively if you're not on top of your game. And it was really interesting. I've had a real mental sort of flick of the switch when I left corporate to do what I do now. And it was interesting. I look back at my times in corporate and I'd regularly sacrificed my health for those late meetings I had to do. And then I realized when I started running a business, the business won't work if I can't work. And so I flipped how I prioritized my health because I realized, yes, the business is important, but for that business to work, my health has to come first.
All right, I think I'm working too much and I'm not leading by example in the whole right to disconnect area. And by crikey, you're giving us a lot to think about here today. But are there any things that can help me manage my time better or get through the week so I'm not overworking?
Yeah. One of the most important things to do is to really look at how you time block your day. And part of that is assessing the week. How much of my time am I kind of in the nitty-gritty of the business? How much of the time am I spending with my team? How much of my time am I in sales mode? How much of my time is it sort of revenue generation because there's sort of like a delivery element to it? Then there's various different tools that you can use, but you want to assess your working week. One of the things that I also do is I color code my diary. So my diary is color coded according to particular activities, so I can then at a glance, weekly and monthly, get a sense of what portion of my business is based on kind of selling, admin, delivery work, and other sort of general thinking and learning. Now, for whatever business you're in, those categories will be different. And then I ruthlessly time block my day. So the day before, so I will go home this afternoon after this conversation, Jeff, and I will map out tomorrow. And I map out by half-hour blocks everything that I am doing through the day. And once again, that day is balanced between the things that have to get done, which are the sort of immediate work, and then there's going to be longer-term project work. And we often have this weird notion with motivation. We sometimes wait for motivation to strike us. Motivation comes from the doing. And so when you're not motivated to get something done, those things that we often put off because they feel kind of hard, do those first things in the morning. You want to do the hardest, most complex tasks when your brain is freshest. Do those far more mundane, the things where we talk about, like default thinking. You don't really need to think about it. Do them later in the day when you're tired. So you time block your day, but you also work out when is my brain at optimal speed to be able to process.
Anything else?
Make sure you have time for breaks, Jeff. In your time blocking, build in micro breaks because it's really important to actually have those breaks so that you can come back to tasks and be more fresh.
That's workplace expert Michelle Gibbings. Business Essentials Daily is a SoundCartel podcast. Producers are Nick Schildberger, Jeff Waters and myself. Technical production by Pete Letts. I'm Nicole Goodman. Thanks for listening. We'll bring you more Be Daily next week.